Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jai Mr. Paramahansa, Padurikacharya, Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa, Padurikacharya, Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavana Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Nectar of Instruction Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Janardhan Das, can you open these doors, and close those doors? You know the drill. Rama Rama Hare Hare. Ramavati, can you close those doors? Thanks. Thank you, Boo. Ready? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All right. We need one fan. No, we can't have any fans. All right, turn it off. Turn it off. Yeah, turn it off. We're going to tough it out. That way, if we don't have fans, then the deities can't. Well, it's okay if they don't have fans. It's cool enough. It's not. Okay. 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 Oh, that other fan is on. The one on the altar. Yeah. It's just a sound. I mean, I'd rather have the deities have some. But now we got only Jagannath's getting cool than the others. No, it's okay. We'll tough it out. That's not too bad. Okay, try it again. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 13th day of August 2018 in SanDiego, we're reading from the Nectar of Instruction, the Upadeshamrita by Rupa Goswami, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And today we're finishing text number 1 and perhaps beginning text number 2. Vacho vegam manasakrodha vegam Jimva vegam unuropasta vegam Etan vegan yovishaheta dira Sarvam hapimam pritaving sashishyat Vacho vegam manasakrodha vegam Jihva vegam unuropasta vegam Etan vegan yovishaheta dira Sarvam hapimam pritaving sashishyat Vacho vegam manasakrodha vegam Jimva vegam unuropasta vegam Etan vegan yovishaheta dira Sarvam hapimam pritaving sashishyat Vacho vegam manasakrodha vegam Jihva vegam unuropasta vegam Etan vegan yovishaheta dira Sarvam hapimam pritaving sashishyat Vacho vegam manasakrodha vegam Jimva vegam unuropasta vegam Etan vegan yovishaheta dira Sarvam hapimam pritaving sashishyat Vacho vegam manasakrodha vegam Jihva vegam unuropasta vegam Etan vegan yovishaheta dira Sarvam hapimam pritaving sashishyat Vacho vegam manasakrodha vegam Jimva vegam unuropasta vegam Etan vegan yovishaheta dira Sarvam hapimam pritaving sashishyat. So before I read the translation, anyone have an idea where Damodar Kumar is? Right behind me, there he is. Okay. So you're going to monitor that in the back eventually? Okay. Translation. A sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world. Okay, so we are nearing the end of this purport in a paragraph that begins, the conclusion. The conclusion is that one who can control these 6 items, speech, mind, anger, tongue, belly, and genitals, is to be called a Swami or Goswami. Swami means master, and Goswami means master of the go, or senses. When one accepts the renounced order of life, he automatically assumes the title of Swami. This does not mean that he is the master of his family, community, or society. He must be master of his senses. Unless one is master of his senses, he should not be called Goswami, but Godas, servant of the senses. Following in the footsteps of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, all Swamis and Goswamis should fully engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As opposed to this, the Godasas engage in the service of the senses or in the service of the material world. They have no other engagement. Prahlad Maharaj has further described the Godas as Adanta Go, which refers to one whose senses are not controlled. An Adanta Go cannot become a servant of Krishna. In Srimad Bhagavatam 7.530, Prahlad Maharaj has said, Matirna Krishne Padatak Svatova Mito Bipanje Griha Vratanam Adanta Go Bhi Vishatangta Misram Punak Punaschar Vitacharvananam. For those who have decided to continue their existence in this material world for the gratification of their senses, there is no chance of becoming Krishna conscious, not by personal endeavor, by instruction from others, or by joint conferences. They are dragged by the unbridled senses into the darkest region of ignorance, and thus they madly engage in what is called chewing the chewed. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and to all members of Shri Parampara. So that concludes the first verse of the Upadeshamrita, the Nectar of Instruction. And in this verse, Rupa Goswami has given us instruction for ourselves and also for choosing a spiritual master. This is the end of this verse says that one who can control these vegas or urges can make disciples all over the world. So this is a verse like is right in all of our what they call wheelhouse. You know, it's very pertinent to all of us. Any aspiring transcendentalist must confront these urges, and if you can't control them, then you have no hope of actual advancement. So Vacho Vegam, Manasak Krodha Vegam, the first three are more subtle. The urge to speak is actually also obviously comes from the mind also. There's a very you'll find that you put a few people together and automatically they'll start gabbing away. I remember I was on a bus once in New York a long time ago. Somehow I had to go somewhere in Manhattan. I was a devotee. And suddenly it dawned on me, you know, if there's two people who know each other, they're going to be talking the whole time. Something going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it just expands unlimitedly. And with the internet, it's multiplied 10 times unlimitedly. It's just, what is Facebook? Facebook is just a way where you can, you know, tell people what you're doing, find out what they're doing, comment on what they're doing, and in this way, before you look up, it's an hour's gone. And the pictures, you know, that's another form of talking, to show yourself and to do all these things and glorification. So this is the urge to speak. Now the urge to speak, as we know, when used in Krishna's service, is actually the most the primary thing that we do to advance. As was mentioned last night, Atak Shri Krishna Namani Nabhave Grayam Indriyai Sevan Mukhahi Jivado Swayabeva Sparatida. That with our present senses, because they are contaminated from many births of association with the material modes of nature and being used in sense gratification, therefore the senses and the mind is included in that as the sixth sense, the controlling sense. We have we cannot perceive the actual nature of Krishna's name, form, qualities, etc. We may hear something that's Krishna, but it doesn't really register upon us. We have no idea what the actual import of that name is, or what to speak of anything else about Krishna. But if one is somehow inspired to begin the service of Krishna with the tongue, by chanting his holy name and tasting prasadam, then eventually that will lead to the point where one is so purified that Krishna will reveal himself. And he reveals himself through the senses, meaning that you'll hear the holy name and it will mean more and more to you until finally you actually realize the most inconceivable thing, which is that the name is not different from Krishna. What is it? Binnat vam nama namino. There's no separation. There's no difference between the name and the name. Now you want inconceivable things. That's as inconceivable as it can get. But that's reality. That's actually reality. And that we can understand that eventually. So, as in everything else, when used in the service of Krishna, the very things that are binding us here become liberating. The power to speak and what to think of here. The mind's demands. Now the mind becomes conditioned. That's the primary agent of our conditioning, because the mind is described like a Vaidurya gem, a certain gem that whatever color it's next to, it'll take on that color. And we have an experience experience in our devotional lives. We have experience in the material life, but we're not aware of it. That if you expose yourself to certain foods and people and sounds and ideas, then they have an effect on you. That goes into your mental bank account, we may say subconscious, and it affects you. It means that you'll be more likely to do everything in the mode that you're associating with. The modes of nature, they affect the mind. And then that's how you'll act, that's how you'll speak, that's how you'll think. So the mind is a key element in any yoga process. Really, when we're hearing and chanting, the key is that we're placing our mind there, that we're focusing, and that the sound is going into the mind and purifying. So if we don't do any yoga process, just ordinary, then the mind has so many urges and demands. The whole system of socioeconomic system we live in is based on consumerism. The whole economy here is 70% buying things, people buying things for their own use, not big industry or anything. Most thing is the consumer. So as we have experienced in our own lives, in our devotional life, you can get along with very little compared to what people think they need out there. But how can you do that? Only if you have the current of Krishna consciousness giving you some satisfaction and making you indifferent to a million different things out there. I mean, as devotees, as brahmachari, basically, or householders, strict householders, you can walk down the street, and especially I like give you an example. When you used to go on Harinam every Friday, you go down to that Gaslamp district. That's a district where they gentrify, and they try to make it nice for tourists to come and buy things and spend their money. That's the whole idea. So there's a million different things you can be attracted to there. There's young women scantily dressed. There's food of all kinds. There's some bar where the music is playing, and people are getting drunk and everything. And at a certain point in our lives, we might have been, go down there for a different reason and actually look at it. But then you're on a Harinam and you're just chanting, and you're enjoying to some extent. Otherwise, relishing the holy name, and all of that is just fluff. That's what liberation is. That's the kind of liberation that we should aspire for. So those impressions that stay in the mind of things that they try to implant in your mind through advertising and everything, that's how the powers that be control us and suck out our life energy by running around trying to buy things that we don't really need. So if one can control those urges, you can imagine how liberating that is, empowering. So that has to be controlled. And anger. When we know that anger is the younger brother of lust or something like that. In other words, if you're materially attached to so many things, the more likely you will be to experience frustration, and that frustration is just another form of anger when it breaks out and become enraged. Somebody is curbing your sense gratification, and that goes in the family, tribe, nation. The world, the world is. I mean, I've been aware of what's going on in the world for like 60 years, and I don't remember a time when there was any long time of peace. There's always something brewing in some corner, and usually the United States has its finger in it somehow. And what is all that about? Well, basically it's imperialism. It's that the United States, we won World War II, and then we won the Cold War. So we should dominate the whole world. We have 800 bases around, 800 military bases all over the world. Do you know that? And Israel, yeah. So it's like, why do we need that? What's the point? Because we read about these demons, who want to take over everything. There's Jarasandha and Hiranyakashipu and Kamsa. Any little slight, any little thread. Kill my own sister, annihilate,
Jarasandha was nuts. 18 times with the big armies. He doesn't care how much blood is flowing. Somehow I got to kill Krishna. It was curbing my sense gratification. So that's anger, and it becomes institutionalized. The Department of Defense, basically, it's like big Hulk. Looking for somebody to fight. It's challenging. That's madness. So on an individual level, we also have our battles to fight. But it begins with the lust. If we can take our desires for enjoyment and direct it toward serving Krishna, which is what bhakti is all about, then we can find that so many things that would have bothered us before don't bother us. You're walking down the street, somebody insults you. You might have gotten enraged at one point. Who cares? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. It doesn't happen nearly as much as it used to. When we were just starting the movement, people would insult us and do things. Now we're kind of a cultural artifact. People like us, But still, those three have to be controlled. And then there are the obvious physical ones, the urges of the tongue, the belly, and the genitals. Not easy to control. The problem is you're controlling so many different things. Well, then it may come out on the tongue. To eat more and more and more than you need. That's a phenomenon that devotees have to struggle with. But if you can do that, or if you see someone who is doing that, this is what this verse is all about, who's really controlled the urge, the mind's demands. If someone can be very tolerant, I was just reading, Prabhupada's rereading Lilamrita, and then in 1967 he's in Haight-Ashbury. It came up in New York, but it really came up in Haight-Ashbury, where you had this whole hippie crowd and half crazy on the drugs, sometimes walking in there, interrupting Prabhupada, challenging him. I'm God, so many things, and Prabhupada had to tolerate it all, remain calm and equipoised, So he demonstrated, and little eating and the whole thing. Prabhupada perfectly matched this verse, and he made disciples all over the world. It's almost evidence you can see. And you go to some other bogus yogis, who came and went. God, I read this story of Rajneesh. Did you ever read about him? The guy was like a gangster. Up to murder. They were trying to poison people up there in Oregon. I swear, if you read it, you blanch. What is that? So this is a good criterion. We can see if someone is over a year's time, you can see that he's controlling these six and ecstatic in Krishna consciousness as a genuine guru. So that's what this whole purport is about. Now Prabhupada has written these extensive explanations, and we went through it. So if there's no comment or question on this verse, we can start the second one. Now this is all practical, 11 little verses. It's all for us. It's all very practical for devotees. It's although Prabhupada in his infinite wisdom had us, print 100,000 and distribute it on the street. So, Hare Krishna. All right, let's go on. Some of you have devices. Some of you don't, but we'll get through it. Atyahara priyasascha pajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha laulyangcha shadbir bhakti vinashyati. Okay, so this is the verse we're going to keep going out for next Monday too, because these purports are very long. All right, so there's these 6 things which destroy bhakti, and they expand into 8 actually. One's devotional service is spoiled. Vinashyati means destroyed. When devotional service is spoiled, when he becomes too entangled in the following 6 activities: eating more than necessary, or collecting more funds than required. 2, over-endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain. 3, talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. 4, practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them, and not for the sake of spiritual advancement, or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. 5, associating with worldly-minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. And 6, being greedy for mundane achievements. So we'll read this translation each time. We'll go through part of this purport. Human life is meant for plain living and high thinking. Since all conditioned living beings are under the control of the Lord's third energy, this material world is designed so that one is obliged to work. Damodar Kumar Prabhu, what are the Lord's three main divisions of his energies? I'm sorry, belt it out. Okay. Did he get it right? I can't hear him. Marginal. Okay. Internal, marginal, and external. Thank you. So Prabhupada is talking about the external energy, which is called Antaranga Shakti. Antaranga means external. The Lord has three primary energies or potencies. The first is called the Antaranga Shakti. That's the internal energy. The second is called the Tatastha. It's actually Tastha Shakti, or the marginal energy. And the third is called the Bahiranga Shakti. Let's just unpack those terms. We should know what those terms mean. So Antaranga, Antar means within, Antaranga Shakti. Tatastha is made of two words, Tata and Sta. Sta, as in any kind of word that has that phrase, stira or stita, means fixed or situated, and tata is the margin, or the, on the beach. The Shakti we know. And then Bahir is outside, so Bahiranga Shakti, or the external energy. The third is called, the living entities constitute the marginal potency, and they are situated between the internal and external potencies. Being subordinate as eternal servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Jivatmas, or atomic living entities, must remain under the control of either the internal or external potency. So we're never really independent. We're either under the control of internal or external. When they are under the control of the internal potency, they display their natural, constitutional activity, namely constant engagement in the devotional service of the Lord. This is stated in Bhagavad Gita 9:13. We can all chant together if you know it. Mahatmanas tumam parta Daivim prakatimashritaha Bhajantyananya manaso Gatva bhutanamavyayam. O son of Prita, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. The word Mahatma refers to those who are broad-minded, not cripple-minded. Cripple-minded persons always engage in satisfying their senses, sometimes expand their activities in order to do good for others through some ism like nationalism, humanitarianism, or altruism. They may reject personal sense gratification for the sense gratification of others, like the members of the family, community, or society, either national or international. Actually, all this is extended sense gratification, from personal to communal to social. This may all be very good from the material point of view, but such activities have no spiritual value. The basis of such activity is sense gratification, either personal or extended. Only when a person gratifies the senses of the Supreme Lord can he be called a Mahatma, or broad-minded person. So, Prabhupada is kind of setting the basis here for explaining the verse, because all of these things, eating too much, collecting too much, these are manifestations of material activity, material mentality. So he contrasts that with what human life is meant for. In other words, the general life we see outside is a huge mistake. Everybody is totally, making a huge mistake in their activities. And that includes, as Prabhupada mentions it in the second paragraph here, those who are trying to do good for others, because they don't know that the real good is to give them the means and the understanding by which they can break out of all the miseries entirely. So this is explained very nicely in the preface to the Nectar of Devotion, is that we have this tendency to love, but we don't know where that love can be placed, where it can really expand unlimitedly. And so we naturally love our body first, and then you love your people related to your body, and you grow up, and you may actually get into a larger consciousness of your tribe or your state, your nation, or even all of humanity. But the basis is still sense gratification. If you feel some empathy, this is all on the good side, as Krishna explains in chapter 12. If you can't practice bhakti yoga, at least try to be selfless and empathetic and help others. Don't become greedy, selfish, egotistical, and collect more than necessary. That's the first one. But that's not ultimately. That's still a mistake, because you want to help people in their material lives, feeding children or whatever it may be. It's good, but it's not good enough, and it keeps you bound here. So Prabhupada is talking, what's a real Mahatma? And this is, of course, in 913. It's contrast to the demons, those who deride the Lord. Avadananti mamuda manushim tanamashada parambhavmajanatu mama bhuta maheshadam mogasha mogakarmano mogagyana vache rakshasim asadim chaiva prakriti mohinim shita. They've taken shelter of the prakriti, of the mohini prakriti, the bewildering external energy. Those who have absolutely no understanding of Krishna, they'll deride Krishna, his devotees, the whole process. They don't know anything about Krishna. Then what happens? All of their aspirations come to dust, mogasha. All their activities are frustrated. Their knowledge is ultimately taken away and useless. And they're in the category of the Rakshasas and the Asuras. That's what Krishna says. And the contrast is here, the Mahatmas. So you have the Duratmas, the demons, and you have the Mahatmas. Daivim Prakatam. The Ashrita. The Ashrita means we have to take shelter of some energy. That was what Prabhupada was talking about, the internal, external, and marginal. We're marginal. We're minute. Either we're under the guidance and the shelter of the internal energy in our natural position. Some never even experience the external, nitya muktas. They're always there with Krishna. And then we who've been here so long, it seems like forever. We've taken shelter, we've made our focus the external energy. So the whole process is moving from the external to the internal energy. And because Krishna is so kind, and he's always concerned for us. He never forgets us, and he never stops loving us. And so he makes arrangements where that internal energy can be available even in the external energy. And that's the presence of the great acharyas, the spiritual master, the holy name, the deities, everything that we experience. This is Krishna's mercy on us. And I was thinking about these beautiful flowers, we're giving. Those are created by Krishna, and all it takes is that devotee to pick the flower and put it and then place it on Krishna, and it just enhances so much. The whole idea is the reciprocation there. The pujaris and then the devotees appreciate the beauty and Krishna's. That's the internal energy, But it's so rare. I mean, people can walk on his property. You've seen, we're open here, and they walk on his property. They have no idea what's here. They're not interested. They just want to take a shortcut or something, or sit on the seat. Now they benefit to some proximity. But the difference is, someone walks in the temple. They understand the deity is here. They chant Hare Krishna. The whole thing is a mentality, but the availability is there. So our whole struggle is to decrease the amount in which we're absorbed in and taking shelter of the external energy, and more in the internal energy, which is service to Krishna. So, okay. Any comments, questions on these points? Okay, I'll repeat it. Go ahead, assuming it's not too long. You're talking about Prabhupada hasn't even gotten to that point. He's just he's setting the scene here for atyahara, for over collecting. Greed. It's greed. It's okay. I'm sorry? Well, okay. Let's read a little more. We have a little more time. Maybe he'll actually talk about atyahara. Okay, indeed, all living entities within this material world are under the control of Mahamaya, whose business is to subject them to the influence of the threefold miseries. All right, I'm going to say the Sanskrit, and whoever knows the answer can what it is. Adidaivaka klesha. What does it mean? Belt it out. What did he say? No, that's wrong. Yeah, it's the natural thing. Adidaiva. You can get deva, the devas. Adidaivika klesha, sufferings caused by the demigods like droughts, earthquakes, right here, and storms. Okay. Ramapati. Adibhautika klesha. Yeah, other living beings. Yeah. Sufferings caused by other living entities like insects or enemies. Klesha means misery. Adibhautika means from the body, from the different bodies. And the last one is adhyatmika klesha, sufferings caused by one's own body and mind, such as mental, physical infirmities. Daiva bhutatma hetava, the conditioned souls subjected to these three miseries by the control of the external energy suffer various difficulties. This daiva bhutatma is just a summary word that describes it. The main problem confronting the conditioned souls is the repetition of birth, old age, disease, and death. In the material world, one has to work for the maintenance of the body and soul. But how can one perform such work in a way that is favorable for the execution of Krishna consciousness? In other words, you have to keep body and soul together, but how can you do it so you don't get entangled? Everyone requires possessions such as food, grains, clothing, money, and other things necessary for the maintenance of the body. But one should not collect more than necessary for his actual basic needs. Now Prabhupada's actually, he's set the scene. Now he's speaking directly to the verse. If this natural principle is followed, there will be no difficulty in maintaining the body. According to nature's arrangement, living entities lower on the evolutionary scale do not eat or collect more than necessary. Consequently, in the animal kingdom, there is generally no economic problem or scarcity of necessities. If a bag of rice is placed in a public place, birds will come to eat a few grains and go away. A human being, however, will take away the whole bag. He will eat all his stomach can hold and then try to keep the rest in storage or sell it. I added that. According to corner the market on rice, then you can make millions, right? According to the scriptures, this collecting of more than necessary, atyahara, is prohibited. Now the entire world is suffering because of it. Atyahara, ati ahara. Ahara means to consume. And ati means a lot, too much. And ahara also means to collect. So you're collecting more than necessary. That's the secondary meaning. Collecting, all right, we'll leave one more paragraph here. Collecting and eating more than necessary also causes prayas, or unnecessary endeavor. So these are tied up together. That was the next one. Prayas, that was the second one. By God's arrangement, anyone in any part of the world can live very peacefully if he has some land and a milk cow. There is no need for man to move from one place to another to earn a livelihood, for one can produce food grains locally and get milk from cows. That can solve all economic problems. Fortunately, man has been given higher intelligence for the cultivation of Krishna consciousness, or the understanding of God, one's relationship with Him, and the ultimate goal of life, love of God. Unfortunately, so-called civilized man, not caring for God realization, utilizes his intelligence to get more than necessary and simply eat to satisfy the tongue. By God's arrangement, there is sufficient scope for the production of milk and grains for human beings all over the world, but instead of using his higher intelligence to cultivate God consciousness, so-called intelligent men misuse their intelligence to produce many unnecessary and unwanted things. Thus factories, slaughterhouses, brothels, and liquor shops are opened. If people are advised not to collect too many goods, eat too much, or work unnecessarily to possess artificial amenities, they think they are being advised to return to a primitive way of life. Generally, people do not like to accept plain living and high thinking. That is their unfortunate position. What was your question going to be?
Well, it was further down the list.
Yeah, because we're going to go through the whole thing. Any other comments on this? I think we're all familiar with the problem of overeating. I know that's spent years battling that. But it just, you can boil it all down to this, is that material life is a huge distraction from where the mind is supposed to be on. And when we do things that get us more involved in material life, the mind becomes absorbed in the externals. And that causes fear, and it causes continued birth after birth entanglement. So now we have the means. We know from experience, not just from theory, about the benefit of chanting, being absorbed in the holy name, and how that gives a real sense of happiness and joy. We know that can be increased and increased and increased till we're in ananda, right? But our conditioning is like a drag on us. And part of that conditioning is that, oh, there's some enjoyment here, and let me increase it more and more. And so in an environment like an ashram, you find so many things are missing. Women are missing, and that's a big thing. So that's a huge distraction that isn't here. You know, it's part of the main blessing of being in an ashram situation like this, brahmacharya ashram. So, but still, that enjoyment is going. You know, the mood is going one way or another. Now, if it's directed, if your energy is directed in serving Krishna, then that's very wholesome and is purifying. But and then there's prasadam. Prasadam is purifying. It's spiritual. But at the same time, there's a material enjoyment that you can get there. And if you try to increase that too much, then you suffer, and it becomes distracting. You know, the belly is too full. It's very hard to chant the next day. You can't. You sleep too much. It's a whole thing, and you're agitated sexually. So it's very scientific. You know, if you can control the tongue, then you got a shot at controlling everything else. The Prabhupada says. If not, then things tend to get out of control, because So it's all right where we live, you know. So that's why atyahara is placed first. We could get through that one, then the other ones become feasible. So it's a battle, and we shouldn't give it up. But gradually we can decrease and realize, we can get along much better with eating very moderately. More energy, less distraction, better health. It's good in many ways. Okay, if there are no questions or comments, all glories to the Prabhupada. Thank you for your attention. Is everyone okay with this little variation on the Bhagavatam class? I think it's good to go through this book. Following Srila Prabhupada? Well, the idea is that this time is meant for a class. You know, that was a special event. It was like, I forget, some holiday or something. We did something. Anyway, we can discuss it, but we should okay it with Bhajan Ryan Maharaj. Well, he arranged it with me, but I was because Prabhupada was so keen on having a class. You know, that's the thing. I mean, if we can do it some other time. I mean, there's no reason. Think of it like this. How about this? That one day a week, and close the curtains, take prasadam in here, and while we're taking prasadam, we have it. Use that time. That's a possibility. Anyway, we can discuss it, but I appreciate I mean, that is a wonderful series. It's among all of the videos, it's near the top for me of that Yadabar made. It was just so wonderful. It took him years. But we will try to integrate it. But before we do something else regularly here instead of a class, I want to. Okay.